How many people, I wonder how many people actually understand the implications of not consenting to a state of universal prosperity? Do they know what they are signing on to by default? Dubious warfare, much crime, national, state, and individual debt, abortion, prostitution, illicit, deadly drug pushing, and countless forms of escapism through destructive vices, just to name a few of the implications. That's right, folks. Anybody against universal prosperity and God's will being established on earth? That's what you're signing on to. That's what you're saying. Yeah, I'd rather have that than universal prosperity. I'd rather have all those social, political, and economic ills continue than have universal prosperity and have God's will be established on earth as it is in heaven, because that's what's coming. That's what the new age is ushering in. Through the concept of embracing an attitude of self-righteousness, though the concept of embracing an attitude of self-righteousness may be extremely enticing, those with acute indignation over injustices, the righteous ones among us, but the truth is that self-righteousness is a patently unbecoming quality both among God and man. So yeah, no matter how right you are and how wrong somebody is, or how many people, whatever, groups of people, self-righteousness is an unbecoming quality. So there's no need to embrace it. Vanity and conceit and ego, all this stuff has no place. Remember, there's one famous one. That belongs to God, okay? And that's where we should always deflect the glory for anything good that we ever think, say, or do, accomplish in this life, or anybody else for that matter. Self-righteousness, no, not a becoming quality. So it's not only perfectly okay to complain, provided your complaint has merit, but we have an obligation to complain of injustices which don't even appear to affect us personally. Right. You've got to give a crap about others. You could say, well, this doesn't affect me. But you've got to be, to be a godly human being, to be God's friend, to be a friend of humanity, you've got to care about other people. Really care. When you hear about people being killed and injured and dying out in the cold, all this invented, artificial, unnecessary suffering out there at the hands of the evildoers that are in charge of the world affairs at this point, Satan and his minions, witting and not, you've got to be disgusted. You've got to hate your life in a world like that. That's how you're godly. That's how you're a good Philadelphian. You're a good humanitarian. You're on the side of humanity. You're on God's side. And you are nearly assured to go to a better world. So you reject the worldly definition of things like success and gravitate to the godly definition of success. That's being his friend, successfully being his friend, and successfully winning souls for God. The best we're going to let people know he's a good guy through and through, and nothing bad is to be attributed to God. And his name is going to be 100% entirely vindicated throughout the land for all eternity, and he's going to prove he's a good guy. And he's going to separate the bullies from the righteous, the unrighteous from the righteous, the wicked from the righteous. And it's coming. He has to. He has to. He promised to do it, and he will fulfill his promises. All prophecy will be fulfilled in his time, not ours. Sure, you may be entitled, righted, that is to say, to belittle, taunt, and bully those you believe to be idiots or evil. But how would you like it if one of them blows their brains out while live streaming and blames it on you for bullying? Huh? How would you like that? So right or wrong, you will live with the implications for the rest of your life. It's just like being careful driving your car, okay? Because if an accident's avoidable, it doesn't matter that it wasn't your fault. If somebody dies, you're going to say, well, could I have? Always second guess yourself for the rest of your life. Could I have been more careful? And that person would be alive today? In contemplating the brevity of our time walking the earth, that is human existence, we know it as we know it. Does that bring you down or exhilarate you? You know, we ought to let it exhilarate us. It's not a downer, it's a scientific fact. And since in light of the fact that Jesus proved that death is just another lie from the pit of hell, you can't really die. then we don't have to, that's not a downer. That's not being morbid or something to talk about death and the brevity of our existence and the vulnerable, the precarious nature, touch and go nature of our very existence. This is something we should discuss. And so that we're real. We really strive to be somebody pleasing to God and man that can really win souls. To not be a friend to the world, but to be a friend to the people that are stuck in this world. Like Jesus said, that God so loved the world, that's the people of the world, so much that he gave his only son to prove it. That whoever believes in him shall never perish, but have everlasting life. This is a beautiful thing. Fuzzy, ambivalent, nebulous hypocrisy versus blatant, brazen, alarming, glaring hypocrisy. Remember, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Yeah, so all you hypocrites out there, remember, if you say that it's all okay, you rationalize your hypocrisy, then everybody else can do that too. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. I love that passage. So it doesn't mean that the gander should pick up your evil, but, if they do, you can't blame them. When you take 5 minutes that is, to count your daily blessings, do you ever consider the plethora of bad things that haven't befallen you today? I talked about that earlier. Is it really so radical to boldly contend that it most certainly wasn't God that placed a tax on your right to exist? That's your cost of living. Or innocuously termed your cost of living. No, it's not God's fault. That wasn't God. That was the money masters of this unreality. That's who shoved it down our throats at birth. That's the right to survive. They're the gods of this world, right? How do they get away with their brazen crimes against humanity? By deluding and keeping pacified a critical mass of brutish, well-heeled minions. That's right. Being a little bit elitist is like slightly believing in inequality, and one has no standing on where the line is drawn. That's it. You can't do it. You can't be a little bit elitist, because it's like believing a little bit in inequality, and then you've got no standing. You can't tell somebody else, well, they should draw the line here in terms of believing in inequality. No standing. You got to believe in absolute equality or not at all. Okay, that's absolute freedom. Being a little bit elitist, like being a little bit pregnant, it simply doesn't and cannot exist. One is either elitist or believes fully in equal rights, equal entitlements as decided by God, not by men. Appreciating the value of the Fourth Amendment, you appreciate a modicum of personal privacy. As such, you don't approve of anybody going through your personal papers and effects or files, which of course includes computer phone files in this day and age. This anybody includes cyber entities like Google, YouTube, etc., etc. That's right. We should respect each other's privacy, I think. If you like a little privacy, then assume others like a little privacy. The horror, the virtually unspeakable regarding the utterly insidious nature of how society's economic sausage is actually made. Dubious wars, plenty of preventable crime, high taxes, high cost of living, national debt, state and individual debt. Most jobs depend upon societal ills to continue. That's the economic sausage of this wonderful civilized society, as we call it. Have you ever felt an irresistible urge to get your thoughts out of your head and onto paper? Well, you can see I obviously do. Quite frankly, I need slack, and in light of the fact that I am willing to give slack to others, I feel entirely justified and righted to take slack. Is anyone so foolish, so deluded, so brainwashed as to believe for even a moment that the copyright to the money isn't worth trillions and trillions and numbers without ends? So how could you ever buy that right? Can't. There's not enough money in the world to buy the copyright to the money. The New World Order cabal defined traitors in the souls of men, including their own